If you've opened a social media app lately, you've seen them. Perfectly lit, cozy videos showing a cup of coffee next to a stack of books promising to fix your life. Titles like Beauty of Trauma dominate these feeds, offering readers a way to embrace their inner child and make peace with the past. So you buy the book, you do the reading, you fill out the journal prompts. But a few weeks later, someone makes an offhand comment at work, and you still freeze up or spiral, reacting to the exact same triggers. It leaves a lot of people wondering, are you just doing the exercises wrong, or are these books promising a level of healing they can't actually deliver? These books are valuable for providing a vocabulary for our pain. However, treating a paperback like a replacement for clinical intervention creates a cycle of false hope and eventually self-blame. Look at this checklist of how popular trauma literature is marketed. The pitch focuses on healing past wounds or finding closure. The problem is the method. Reading, journaling, and cognitive reframing are strictly rational, conscious exercises. But clinical trauma doesn't operate in the rational mind. From a Jungian perspective, trauma is a non-rational phenomenon. When you read, you are using logic. When you experience a trauma response, your brain and body actively bypass that logic. You cannot logic your way out of a problem that was not created by logic. This iceberg diagram maps where different interventions work in the brain. The waterline divides the visible conscious mind from the massive unconscious mind below. The very tip of the iceberg is where you live most of your day, the seat of rational thought and logic. This surface level is where pragmatic and boundary books like Pencat or Susanya Hidop dengan Manusia live. When you read these, you are taking in instructions on how to manage your daily emotional energy, recognize toxic traits, and practice setting cognitive boundaries. The result is a quick acquisition of tools to protect your peace and say no to unreasonable demands. These are highly effective for daily burnout, but they are structurally useless for deep-seated triggers, relying on you to already be in a rational, calm state to apply their advice. Moving down the iceberg to the waterline, we find Inner Child and Trauma Reframing books. The work here involves engaging with cognitive exercises, writing letters to your past self, and learning the psychological vocabulary to describe what happened to you. This process provides emotional validation. It breaks the feeling of isolation and gives you a conscious awareness of why you hurt. Fictional trauma narratives also sit here. Immersing yourself in a character's struggle builds deep self-empathy and removes the stigma of feeling weak. Both of these categories provide a vital emotional catharsis. However, because they still rely on conscious processing, they act as a temporary emotional salve rather than a structural, biological cure. Now look at the very bottom of the iceberg. This dark, massive base represents the deep unconscious, where clinical trauma lives. Trauma is biologically stored in these non-rational, unconscious parts of the brain and nervous system. Often, these deep traumas occur in childhood, taking root long before rationality and language are even fully formed. Because that physiological reality is locked deep in the body, the surface-level act of reading a sentence cannot reach it. Cognitive understanding alone cannot resolve a root physiological trauma response. Mapping the wound is not the same thing as closing it. This decision tree shows how to choose your next step without wasting time or money. It all depends on your core friction. If your core friction is daily burnout and navigating toxic environments, move toward pragmatic nonfiction. If you need to understand your past pain and stop avoiding it, your best tool is trauma reframing books. But if you are dealing with involuntary physiological triggers, or PTSD, you need to direct your resources strictly to clinical psychodynamic therapy. Matching the tool to the specific depth of the problem is the only way to achieve a positive return on investment for your mental health. Books are the map. They give you the vocabulary of healing, but they are not the territory of healing itself. If you feel overwhelmed by your daily schedule, buy the pragmatic books. Their ROI is high because daily boundaries can be solved rationally. If you are a beginner in self-discovery, use trauma books as a safe, low-cost first step to stop running from your wounds. But if you are deeply traumatized, stop buying books expecting a cure. Pivot your time and financial investment toward clinical therapy. True healing begins the moment we stop asking rational tools to fix non-rational wounds.